Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining me again as part of our conversation series. Tonight's a little bit more presentation style. It's just me hanging out with you. I'm going to talk to you a bit about how BPW is connected to the United Nations. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Amanda Devison, and I am the first Vice President of Business and Professional Women of Greater Moncton. And we've been hosting this conversation series throughout the pandemic just to stay connected and talk to some incredible women and organizations in the community. So tonight I wanted to draw some attention to how BPW is connected to the United Nations, because some people don't know that about us, and I think it's a huge pride point. So I'm going to walk you guys through a presentation along with reviewing the 17 Sustainable Development Goals for the United Nations. So a lot of people may have heard that term before. There's a lot of organizations, municipalities, nonprofits that speak to how they're furthering the mission of the Sustainable Development Goals. So it may not be new to you, or it may be brand new to you, but we'll learn together. So just give me 1 second here to share my screen. Awesome. So BPW the United Nations. So what people sometimes don't realize is that BPW Moncton is not just a local organization. So yes, we are in fact located here in Moncton, but we're actually part of BPW Canada, which is part of BPW International, and BPW International has consultative status with the United Nations. So what that means for you is that if you are a member of BPW Moncton, you are automatically a member of BPW Canada, which is automatically a member of BPW International, and BPW International has the status with the UN. So to give you a little more context of why is that important, well, the greater the number of members that BPW Moncton has determines how many votes we get as delegates at the annual meetings for BPW Canada. So there's a variety of issues that get raised, resolutions we want to put forward to the Canadian government, different issues we want to speak out about. And so as a club, we get to vote on those resolutions and changes and items at the annual meetings for BPW Canada. The more members we have, the more votes we get, which means we can bring more attention, shine more light on what's important to you as a member and towards New Brunswick and local in general. So in turn, the more members BPW Canada has, in turn gives them a greater number of delegates to attend the annual meetings for BPW International, and again, continue on representing our voice and our issues and what we feel are concerns. And then BPW International uses that information to understand, well, what is happening with women across the world, and what are the hot ticket items, what should they be discussing with the United Nations of what needs to be addressed. So that would be how they would work together with that to make sure that those voices are heard and that there's really a pulse on what's happening to women across the world. So one of the big things that I really liked about becoming a member of BPW Moncton was, I got to come and hang out with a lot of incredible women and learn about them and have a glass of wine and a laugh and do some personal professional development. But also my membership was in turn helping better the lives of women across the world. So in countries that are not as progressive as Canada, where, women don't even, just recently we're allowed to drive in some countries, places they're still not allowed to vote. Go to school, things like that. So my membership here was actually equipping the betterment of women across the world. So that's a little tidbit on there. So BPW Moncton, we are super local. We try to focus on what's going on here, but also we are a part of BPW Canada, BPW International, and they are linked in with the United Nations. So as I said, BPW International has consultative status with the United Nations. They actually lobbied for the formation of the Commission for the Status of Women, and they continue to support many women's issues. They also have representation at UN headquarters in New York, Vienna, Geneva, and at several regional offices for the United Nations. So they have consultative status with the United Nations Economic and Social Council since 1947, consultative status with the Council of Europe since 1977. They're a member of the Civil Society of Organization of American States since 2009, and they have partnerships with UN Women, UN Global Compact, International Trade Center, and Global Summit of Women. So in terms of BPW itself, Moncton, so our another thing that people don't necessarily know about, we talk about this at our AGM, but unless you've attended an AGM, you may not understand where does the membership fee go. So our annual fee to become a member of BPW Greater Moncton is $125, and that is a 12-month rolling membership. So you can join at any time, and your membership is good for 12 months. So the majority of that is actually goes in dues to national and international. So of your $125 that you pay to become a member, $60.50 goes to BPW Canada and $41 goes to BPW International. So BPW Moncton only keeps $23.50. So this isn't meant to be like a crazy moneymaker for us. We try to keep it very affordable. In fact, many clubs across Canada, their membership fee is much higher than ours, and they actually don't meet as frequently as we do for the most part. So we try to give a lot of value for a very low fee, trying to keep that in mind. We do have to try to cover, the dues, obviously, and then we do have operating expenses. But as you can see, $23.50 is not a whole lot of money to try to run the organization on, but that's why we're trying to keep it low for our members. And the more members we have, the more $23.50s we can accumulate to kind of cover some of those fees. So just to give you an idea, this is where your membership fees go. So in terms of the sustainable development goals, so BPW International worked with the UN on formulating these. They obviously weren't the only partner involved, but it's kind of, it's neat to know that we as an organization were involved in kind of developing these goals. So I'm not obviously going to go extensively through every single one. I will highlight them. A lot of these started before COVID. They have given some context of what the COVID impacts are on each one. But you'll be able to see kind of how a lot of what we're doing as a club aligns with, particularly obviously number 5 of gender equality, but there's a lot of different ones, and that's why a lot of different organizations will pick 1 or 2 goals and talk about how their organization is working towards bettering and furthering the progress on that goal. I put the website at the bottom there if you wanted to learn more about it as well. So the first one is no poverty, and it's to end, these are obviously bold goals. So to end poverty in all its forms everywhere. You'll notice on the right-hand side there'll be a little bit of kind of a more personal blurb of how you could perhaps apply this in your own life, how you can contribute towards the betterment and further of this goal. So donate what you don't use. 836 million people live in extreme poverty. So something you can do in your own life to impact that and move this goal along is to make sure that you donate anything you're not using. So before COVID, the goal for this was to end poverty by 2030. It was already off track. And then obviously COVID-19 implications. There's been a drastic increase of people living in poverty. This is the first increase in global poverty in decades, and there's an additional 71 million people were pushed into extreme poverty in 2020. So, and another piece is that young workers are twice as likely to be living in extreme poverty than adult workers. The second goal is a zero hunger. So end hunger, achieve food security, and improved nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture. So the little tidbit on this is avoid throwing away food. So over 1/3 of the world's food is wasted. Before COVID-19, obviously, there was a lot of food insecurity. It was actually on the rise in 2014. 23.2% of the population was affected by moderate or severe food insecurity. And by 2018, it was up to 26.4%. So COVID-19, we're obviously seeing that is kind of affecting the supply chain and things like that. We kind of saw it in our own backyard when you would go to the grocery store and there was no sugar, there was no flour, there was no yeast. All these weird things kind of got sucked up in a panic. But also there was implications, obviously, for for farmers and food producers. And it's one more thing they're having to deal with in terms of some countries, there's conflict happening, there may be pests. Also, climate change is also a big issue here. The third goal is good health and well-being. So ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. So the takeaway for you in your personal life is vaccinate your family to protect them and improve public health. Obviously, that's quite timely given the circumstances we are living in. So before COVID-19, there was progress in many health areas. It continued, but it did need some acceleration. And now with COVID-19, the implications are obviously there's been a lot of healthcare disruptions, and depending on where you are in the world or where you are in the country or even where you are in the province, those disruptions are of different sizes and different scales, and could reverse some of that improvement. So that is still waiting to be seen. Goal number 4 is quality education. So ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. So the tidbit here is help your children, help children in your community to read. So whether that's through donations of books, I know Chapters has that where you can donate money, and they purchase books or donate books to various schools in the local community. I know also probably there's, maybe not so much now given COVID, but there's always opportunities to volunteer at the library to read to children, etc. So before COVID-19, there was progress towards inclusive and equitable quality education, but it was too slow. Over 200 million children will still be at a school by 2030. And obviously we saw sweeping issues with COVID-19 impacts in this area where schools were closed. Most students stayed out of school, and there has been a lot of talk about what the educational impact was for children. And some people say it's, they're as far back as a year. Also, obviously, since this is a global goal, only 65% of primary schools have basic hand washing facilities, which is obviously critical for COVID-19 prevention. And we have seen some issues in more rural communities with internet. So remote learning is tricky in that sense. And if you're low income, you may not have the tools. Even if there is the internet, you may not have the tools to be signing in. Did I skip one? Yes, okay. Goal number 5, so it is gender equality. So achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. So obviously this is the biggest one that would align with BPW specifically. So an example that you could do to further this goal in your life is call out sexist language and behavior. So despite improvements, full gender equality remains unreached. There are fewer girls being forced into early marriage, and there are more women in leadership roles. But as we know, as we talked about with Don Arnold, the power gap, I believe it was 200 and some years before that was closed. There's supposed to be 100 and some years before the pay gap closes. And then obviously with last week's conversation with Chantel from Crossroads, the lockdowns are causing a dramatic increase of violence against women. Even here locally in the Greater Moncton area, the severity of the violence has increased exponentially. So there's a lot of implications here for women due to COVID, the unpaid workload at the home. So women already did 3 times as many hours of unpaid domestic work as men, and we've only seen that increase with the pandemic. So needless to say, there's a lot of work to be done here. And also women are on the front lines as we've talked about previously as well. So goal number 6 is clean water and sanitation, ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. So the tip here is to avoid wasting water. So water scarcity affects more than 40% of the world's population. So obviously this is an issue too, given again with the need for sanitation with COVID. So before COVID-19, the billions of people still lacked water and sanitation services. Post, like the implications of COVID-19, we're not post COVID-19, my bad. I wish we were post. COVID-19 implications are that 3 billion people worldwide lack basic hand washing facilities at home. And that is the most effective method for preventing COVID-19. So another interesting tidbit is that 2 in 5 healthcare facilities worldwide don't have soap and water or alcohol-based hand sanitizers. So that's a scary thought given kind of what we're dealing with at the moment. Goal number 7 is affordable and clean energy. So ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. So this one, the tidbit is to use only energy efficient appliances and light bulbs. I'm sure a lot of people do that already. Before COVID-19, efforts needed to be scaled up in sustainable energy use. 789 million people lacked electricity, and the COVID-19 implications, affordable and reliable energy is critical for health facilities. 1 in 4 health facilities in some developing countries don't even have electricity. Goal number 8 is decent work and economic growth. So promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth for full and productive employment and decent work for all. So an example of this would be to buy from green companies that are equal opportunity employers. So before COVID-19, global economic growth was actually slowing down. And then obviously, again, this varies by country, by province, et cetera. But there has been a big impact to the economy due to the multiple shutdowns, the period of the shutdowns, things like that. So in tourism, there's obviously that K-shaped recovery people are talking about. There's some industries impacted greater than others, such as tourism and hospitality, seeing, not recovering at the same speed as some of the other industries across the globe. Goal number 9 is industry innovation and infrastructure. So build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation. So before COVID-19, manufacturing growth was declining due to tariffs and trade tensions. So we're still seeing some of that going on with a variety of different countries. So we have to see what that is going to look like in terms of the trade tensions, and a lot of people wanting to produce in their own country, especially now we're seeing so many supply chain issues. I think about, the ship that was stuck in the canal that blocked 10% of the world trade route. Obviously, as well, to COVID-19 implications to this is the aviation industry suffered the steepest decline in history. So air passengers numbers fell by 51% from January to May 2020, and we know that is still continued on. So the tidbit here to apply to your life is think of innovative new ways to repurpose old materials. And another way is kind of maybe promote and support companies that may be doing that as well. Goal number 10 is reduce inequalities, reduce inequality within and among countries so you can raise your voice against discrimination. So before COVID-19, income inequality was falling in some countries. So that was great. But now we are seeing with COVID-19, the implications are obviously hitting a lot of vulnerable groups. So the elderly obviously comes to mind, women, refugees and immigrants are obviously being impacted greatly. They're not able to immigrate. We saw the numbers for Canada fall drastically just because we had such strict travel bans given the virus. Goal 11 is sustainable cities and communities. So make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. So the little tidbit here is bike, walk, or use public transportation to keep our cities' air clean. I do know right now, as well, I saw on Facebook that the city of Moncton does have a survey out about public transportation modes and what your preferred method is, because they're looking to make some investments in those areas. So make sure your voice is heard of what you like to use or would like to see done in the city of Moncton. So this could be a way for you to exercise progress against this goal. So before COVID-19, the share of the urban population living in slums rose to 24% as of 2018. And in the COVID-19 implications are that over 90% of COVID cases are in urban areas. So, I mean, we saw that within our own country. A lot of the bigger cities, it really took off a lot faster, posting a lot bigger numbers. So this is something that should resonate in that way. We've been lucky in that we're, more rural than say your Torontos and Vancouvers of the world. And so we didn't see as great as quick spread and as high numbers as they did. So another interesting stat I thought on this one was that only half of the world's urban population has convenient access to public transportation. And what they mean by convenient access is 500 to 1,000 meters. So within reasonable walking distance. Goal number 12 is responsible consumption and production. So ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns. So this is another one people probably be familiar with. The way to kind of progress this one is recycle paper, plastic, glass, and aluminum. So reduce, reuse, recycle. So before COVID-19, the world was continuing to use natural resources unsustainably. We know that that's an ongoing conversation. And kind of the implication of COVID-19 could really be taking the time to develop a recovery plan that implements some of that sustainable energy and a more sustainable future. So for at the bottom there too, it talks about harvesting, transport, storage, and processing. That 13.8% of our food is lost in just the supply chain. So before it even hits our table or even hits the store, 13.8% of it gets lost. So it's a really interesting large impact, as we saw earlier with the end poverty. These obviously have some domino effects. Goal number 13 is climate action. So take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. So before COVID-19, we knew climate change was not getting better. The days were getting hotter. We kept recording record temperatures all the time. Pollution levels were very high. And then the COVID-19 implications is obviously when everything went into shutdown, a benefit of the pandemic was that the greenhouse gas emissions fell dramatically. Interestingly, they didn't fall enough by what would even be the reduction we would need to achieve to reduce the global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. So they want to just try to limit the increase of, they're not even trying to eliminate the increase in global temperatures. They just want to cap it and hope to stop it at only be 1.5 degrees. So so even though we saw a like off the cliff decrease in the greenhouse gas emissions, it wasn't even enough to be at that rate to continue on reaching the goal for this climate action. Goal number 14 is life below water. So conserve and sustainably use ocean, sea, and marine resources for sustainable development. So the tip for this one is to avoid plastic bags to keep the ocean safe and clean. I'm sure we know from, we live on the water in the Maritimes and in Atlantic. We're obviously very close to the ocean. A lot of industries revolve around that. I'm sure many of us have been to a beach where there's all sorts of plastic pollution. A lot of cities like City of Moncton enacted the plastic bag ban. We're starting to see that in other municipalities as well. So that's a great step. I'm sure you probably have seen as well, whether it's online or whatnot, the different large garbage patches throughout the different oceans where a lot of it kind of swirls around, and how there's a lot of focus on trying to get that cleaned up because it's a huge problem. It's impacting a lot of marine life. So before COVID-19, ocean acidification continued to threaten marine environments and ecosystems. I remember a couple of years ago was when the first story came out about the coral reef being completely bleached, and that's literally kills all the life in there. And now that seems to be happening on a more reoccurring basis because of the acidity in the water and the temperatures of the water. So it's impacting a lot of marine life in that way because it changes the pH balance of the water. So one of the positive implications here is that with COVID-19, obviously there was a reduction in the amount of human activity in and on the water. So they're hoping that will give the ocean a chance to recuperate. I don't know. We'll have to see how that all shakes out, because also there was still a lot of shipping and trade, and a lot of that was happening via ocean, was backed up quite a bit. So we'll have to see how the actual research kind of shakes out on that going down the road. Goal 15 is life on land. So protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, sustainably manage forests, combat desertification, and halt and reverse land degradation and halt biodiversity loss. So the tip here is plant a tree and help protect the environment. So before COVID-19, the world was falling short on their 2020 targets to halt biodiversity loss. So over 31,000 species were threatened with extinction. And the implications for COVID-19, there is still a lot of wildlife trafficking that seems to be disrupting the ecosystem and contributes to the spread of infectious disease. Obviously, we saw with the wet markets, and that's believed to be where COVID-19 began. That there's a whole conversation happening around that about what types of animals and how many should be within a certain area, given that there could be this issue of viruses starting and spreading. Goal number 16 is peace, justice, and strong institutions. So promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. So the tip here is use your right to elect leaders in your country and your local community. It's timely here for Moncton. We have a municipal election coming up in the Greater Moncton area. So you could definitely use your ability to vote, your right to vote, and that would be progress against this. You're exercising a right that not everyone has in every country across the world. Also, I believe it's a federal election year, so same thing. Make sure you get out there and vote. Before COVID-19, every day 100 civilians were killed in armed conflict, despite the fact that they were under protections provided by international laws. And COVID-19 implications are further threatening global peace and security. As we're seeing, there's a lot of tensions out there, whether it's trade related or just the manner in which different countries are ruled, and kind of how they're not seeing eye to eye on some of those things. So another thing is that the noticed here is that 60% of countries have prison overcrowding, which is risking the spread of COVID-19. And we did see a lot of talk about that as well, with some issues throughout Canada and the United States. Goal number 17 is partnerships for the goals. So strengthen the means of implementation and revitalize the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development. So the tip here is to download the SDGs in Action app to learn more about the goals we just talked about and the ways you can help achieve them. The address is right there if that's something you'd be interested in. So so really it's about, again, raising awareness and contributing towards moving these goals forward. So that is all I wanted to talk to you guys about tonight. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to post them below. I just really wanted to shine some light on BPW's connection to the United Nations, as well as discuss the Sustainable Development Goals. So in case you had heard about them in passing, you would understand a little bit more what they are and how they could potentially align to your life. So thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time. I hope you have a great evening and stay safe. We'll see you next time. Bye.